Welcome to Pod Breaks Africa, the sweet and sour bits of passion, where we interview African podcasters sharing their experiences, including successes, challenges, and failures, providing knowledge for budding African creatives who have chosen the spark and want to invest in their passion.
Okay, guys, good evening, everybody. How you're doing? My name is Guinevere, and I'll be hosting today's talks, and we have beautiful speakers in the house, and we'll be meeting them in no time. So without wasting any much more time, we'll just go straight. We all know what APVA is, the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists. We're a community-driven organization, and we seek to amplify, discover, and celebrate African voice audio creatives, and that includes you right here. So today, we'll be looking into the space, the African growing space of podcasting, storytelling, as we can see that a lot of the youths in the African space have found a medium or a voice, a way to get their voice out there as audio storytelling or podcasting. And we'll talk about what the future would be like in the African society, in the podcasting industry, and the challenges we are facing or we would face, and the opportunities and that we will strive to get. And joining me on this topic today is our first one country representative, Tony Doe. And we have the Yes Girls. I'm sure they are here, and that is Akumu and Claire.
Hi. Yes, so this
Hi.
is Claire. I'm logged in on the Yes Girls account.
Oh, okay. Yes Girls. Yes Girls. I like the name. It's really catchy. And I want to listen to the podcast. Like, yes, girls, I will.
And don't forget, it's not just for girls. So yeah, this is Claire logged in on the Yes Girls account, and then Akumu's logged in on her account.
Oh.
Hi.
Hi.
Akumu here.
So if you guys are wondering, who are these beautiful girls talking? They are the host of the Yes Girls podcast and the winner of the Rising Talent of the Year at APVA Podcast Awards 2022. And we would ask them how they felt when they got the awards in no time. But they're Nairobi based. Nice to meet you. We are in Nigeria, and most of you are in parts of Africa. Nice to meet you all as well. And the podcast is just about them documenting their experience in trying new things and taking on challenges that take them out of their comfort zone. It's a quite interesting, engaging podcast, and I'm sure you guys will be very much happy to engage them on that one. So thank you so much for joining. And we also have Echo, the first Nigerian rapper to perform in the African metaverse, host of the Surviving Echo podcast. Echo, how you doing?
Hi. Good evening, everybody. Or should I? Yeah, good evening from this part of the world. It's nice to be here. And I'm glad to be in this conversation.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining. And so before we dive into all the topics that we've highlighted out in the beginning of the conversation, that is, in simple terms, we're going to be discovering the opportunities, challenges that we African podcasters going into this industry would face or are facing already, and the opportunities are there for us to get. But before we do that, we need to tap into the guests and their prowess, what they've done so far, how they've been, and all that good stuff. So in just a few minutes, let's get to know you. Akumu, I'll start with you. Let's meet you.
Okay, so my name is Akumu Fiona. I go by Akumu. I'm Kenyan, based in Kenya. Yes, I'm a podcaster, but beyond the podcast, I do social media management. I'm just a creative in general. I'm also an artist. I draw, and I just love creating things. So I like creating videos, and writing as well is something I am as well. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Akumu. And let's go to Claire, the Yes Girls podcast handle. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Akumu's other podcast half, you could say. We're the two yes girls, so I'm the other half. So like Akumu, I'm a podcaster, but we're only 2 years old as podcasters. But I have been listening to podcasts. Okay, not since the beginning of podcasting, but I would guess before I got into Netflix, I was into podcasting. Let's put it that way. So that shows you how long it's been. I'm also based in Nairobi, and I work in clean energy, and I work with a lot of social enterprises as well. So podcasting is our passion, but not yet our day job. And notice that I said yet. That's an important thing to note.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And Feko, let's meet you.
Okay, my name is Ifeanyi Ibegunam, but my stage name is Feko. Feko is an acronym for Formidable MCs Can Knock Out Obstacles. I've been doing music since 2006, but I started podcasting 2019, and the title of my podcast is Surviving Echo. Surviving Echo is about Lagos, teaching, or should I say, letting our audience know how to survive Lagos, because Lagos can be a very crazy place. And so far, I think I have over 30 episodes. I'm also the winner of the Mic Africa Season 1. And like you said, the first Nigerian rapper to perform in the African metaverse. And it's a privilege to be here.
That is amazing, Feko. You're our Igbo brother. Welcome.
Yeah, Kedu.
So thank you all for allowing us to meet you. So let's get to the topic of the day. And the first hot question I have on my chest to ask all of you, and I will direct it first to Feko, since you're the last speaker to speak right here, is what is the growth rate of podcasters in Africa from your perspective? So I would like to hear from you, Feko.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
The growth rate of podcasters in Africa.
Oh, okay.
From your
Yes. I think podcasting has really grown over the years. And I remember when I started, there were very few podcasters at the time. There was Osagi Alunge, Ayomide Tayo. I'm trying to remember the name of their podcast, but they had this podcast on Pulse NG. If I remember the name subsequently, I'll talk about it. And also LD the Don too had a podcast. But I've seen a lot of people venture into podcasting over the years, and it's interesting to see that a lot of people have so much to share, especially women, because I feel we have more female podcasters than male podcasters. I don't know how true that is, but that's my own opinion. And I also think there's room for improvement as well. However, before I dive into the challenges, I'll just chill, but just answer your question. I think it has grown so far.
Awesome. I share the same sentiment with you as well. So, Akumu, do you also share the same sentiment as Feko?
Yes, and I think it's also going to grow even further, because it's just, I'd say, easier to do. Maybe even using less bundles and all that. And there are platforms like AfriPods who are now creating editing tools that you can use on your phone. So over time, it's going to be way easier than any other content creation platform, I guess. And it needs, less effort. So it's just, it's onwards and upwards from here.
All right. Okay, so I'm glad we all share the same sentiment. The podcasting industry in Africa is growing, especially with the female folks. A lot of us have a lot to say and to get off our chest or to share with the world. And not that the men don't have, but it has the statistics shows more female diving into that, maybe because we naturally like to talk than the female folks.
I think that's true.
The male folks are just, let's get it together. Let's do whatever. So it has actually grown over the years. So now let's dive into, I'll start with Claire on this one. I don't know if Tony Doe has joined in on the show yet, but let's start with Claire on this one. What has podcasting journey be for you, collaborating with Akumu on the Yes journey and in general?
It's been a wild ride. I think to link it to the previous question, what I would say is that when we came into it 2 years ago and created our own podcast, the space was still, or it felt very new in Kenya, at least. There was one kind of dedicated podcast space. There were a good number of podcasts, but they weren't widely known, a lot of them. And when I say widely known, I mean beyond, the creatives industry. They weren't that mainstream, and other creatives kind of maybe looked down on podcasting or were wary of it, didn't quite understand it. So 2 years ago, I feel that's where we were. So in a way, it was a more unknown and exciting time because there were very few pioneers. There were a few that we knew of, that we looked up to, but most of the podcasts that we could find and that we listened to were not from Africa. So I think that's partly what spurred us to actually embark on this podcasting journey. So that was one of the exciting bits, and the challenging thing was really having peers, learning from others. We kind of felt like we were groping in the dark a bit because we didn't feel like there were so many podcasters around us that we could go to just to say, okay, how was your journey? How many episodes have you released? How many, how do you go about securing guests or studio space? So I think that was one of the big challenges. But I would say that in that time, we've really seen how a lot of new, even very small podcasts have come up with a professional sound to them because of the greater availability and the democratization of access to studio space that's affordable, and even the software. So that's one of the breakthroughs that we've definitely seen, and that's really helped us. We've actually changed studios in the time that we've been recording. Now we have the option of where to record within Nairobi. And I'm sure it's not just in Kenya that we've experienced that, but I'm sure some of the other guests here, or even the guys listening, have also seen, there's more places to go and record. There's more people to talk to and say, hey, can I ask you for some advice?
That's true. That is very, very true. So Echo, let's hear from you about your journey on the podcasting road.
So when I started, I used my phone to record like a lot of episodes, and I think that was the only device I had. And I won't say I couldn't like afford studio time to record my podcast, but sometimes I get inspiration to talk about a particular topic, and I just have to improvise at that point in time. So I had to use my phone to record a lot of episodes. Also, getting guests on my show was a problem because sometimes a lot of them couldn't make it, to where I stayed to record, up until I discovered that you can actually invite guests on the Anchor app, to record a podcast session. Then I started utilizing that as well. Also, I just started recording. Like, I didn't have like a proper structure regarding how to go about podcasting. I just started. Like, I feel like, okay, podcasting means just talking and talking and talking. Along the line, I think it was in my third episode, I realized, okay, there needs to be a structure for this. I had to do my research, and I had to listen to other people. And most of the people that influenced me in the podcasting space were not actually Nigerians. So I had to listen to, some of them to really understand how it's done. And I think it improved my podcasting style. And I also introduced some elements into my podcasting, like adding some like radio scratches. And I literally made it look like a radio show, because that was the feedback I got from a lot of people. They said, Surviving a Cold sounds like a radio show. I was like, oh, cool. So it's been an interesting journey over the years. And I think a lot of people actually relate with a lot of the topics I've spoken about on my podcast, and it can only get better. Today, I have my own studio. I record at home, and I don't just use my equipment to record my podcast. I also use it to record, most of my songs. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I think it can only get better.
It has, and it is getting better with you guys coming on board and sharing your stories and your journey with us. So basically, it sounds like most African podcasters started from the dark, Because once upon a time on Podbreaks on APVA, we had a podcaster who said she records in her wardrobe. So because the house was noisy, so she takes herself into the wardrobe, remove the clothes, put herself inside and close it, so she has that quiet place and have a somewhat good sound to record for the podcast. And so we're all trying a lot of things, try and error. And now you are in the forefront of sharing how you started, where you started from, and how it has been. So based on your journey, how would you equate your growth with the journey? Would you say it has been rewarding? Would you say it's still challenging? Would you say it is underwhelming or overwhelming? What exactly would you tame it? How would you equate it? Your journey and the growth you have had on the podcast industry so far. So I will start with Akumi on this one.
I'd say like how it has been so far, not challenges, or can I handle challenges as well?
Yeah, you can go over everything if you want.
Okay. So I think just the biggest challenge right now, seeing that it's an industry in its infancy. I think the biggest one is just the fact that it's not paying us enough to be full time. At least not for most of us. It's a big percentage of podcasters who are having other jobs so that they can fund their passion for the podcast. So I think that's the biggest challenge, just having to balance work and life and everything else, and yet still stay on track, keep consistent in terms of your release dates and stuff. So for me, particularly with Claire, both of us have day jobs, like she said. So the challenge is always what other things in our lives are happening, and if all of those are put into context. So this is how we need to plan. And knowing and our podcast specifically is very unique because we have to plan ahead. So we have to say yes to a new challenge, and then we have to do the challenge, most of them between 1 week to 2 weeks. So that means we need to put that into perspective, and then we need to get experts for each of them. So it's the doing the challenge, it's the getting experts, the recording, it's the research and all that stuff. So we literally have to have a 2-month planning phase for that. And I'm just lucky I have a co-host who's way more organized than I am in terms of just getting stuff done, as creatives. So it's, for me, I think most of those challenges have been helped by the fact that I have a co-host. So we split the cost of the studio time, we split the tasks, and we also, split kind of responsibilities. I do what I'm strong at, she does what she's strong in. So I'd say just having a co-host just cuts down a lot of those challenges. But in terms of growth, it's definitely been worth it. Just having a lot more people resonate with the podcast, and the fact that it's getting them out of their comfort zone and inspiring them to try new things. So yeah, there have been challenges, but we're seeing the benefits of all of that, and then having a co-host helps. Yeah.
So basically, Akumu, you're trying to tell us that the challenges in the podcasting industry can be overwhelming, especially when you're doing it alone. But the growth equates the journey. It's rewarding at the end.
Yes, it's all worth it at the end.
Awesome. That's encouraging. Tako, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. 1000%. I think it's rewarding. So when I started, I wasn't really focusing on monetization, and along the line, I discovered Anchor had a monetization feature. And I think that's the, what's it called? The affiliate program. So for monetizing. And then I started getting paid from podcasting. I was like, wow, this is cool. As a matter of fact, I actually I get more streams from my podcast than I make more streams from my music. So wow. I had to I had to concentrate more on the podcast, because as an Igbo man, for the Nigerians in the house, we kind of lean towards what brings us money immediately. I'm not saying the money is the number one factor, but then when I realized I can instantly make money from podcasting, I had to just focus on it, and it's been paying off ever since. Also, I'm hoping to get brands, that can also, sponsor some of my episodes. And recently, I was at the Africa Next 2023 panel here in Lagos, and that was like my first live podcast session, and the experience was amazing. So I think every year, every time, there's always an opportunity that presents itself due to this whole podcasting thing, and I think it's something I don't need to take for granted.
Awesome. Awesome. That is quite encouraging to hear you guys speak on those. And speaking about challenges, let's dive into that part a little bit more. So I wish Tony Doe can come in here. I have invited you to speak. I see that you're here already. But Claire, let's come to you on this one with a basic part of challenges. What has been the most challenging phase of podcasting for you as a co-host with Akumo on the Yes Girls? And would you also say that creating the content for the podcast has also been another phase of challenge for you?
Yeah. So challenges is really subjective, right? Because our whole podcast is about challenging ourselves. So you could say that by default, everything is challenging. But so there's two ways I want to answer that. So the first one is actually just to build on what my friends were saying earlier. I'm going to call you all my friends. It makes me feel popular. About growth and success. I think the most important thing and the most challenging thing for some people is really defining, to begin with, like, what is your niche, what is your what is your podcast structure going to be? Feko even mentioned, to begin with, it wasn't sure what the structure would be. Defining that in the beginning is really challenging. And maybe it's so challenging because it's so important, right? If you launch a podcast and you don't really know what you're doing, you just say, I'm just going to record. And then you start to find your way, you change halfway through. It's going to be really difficult to have consistency and direction. And part of that is also saying, what is it that I want to get out of this podcast, right? Like if Akumo and I had gone into this saying, we want to become millionaires, well, then we would tell you right now, we've had no growth and we're not making it because we're nowhere near to being millionaires. But defining what it is that you want to get out of it and what your markers of success will be, I think are really important. It could be financial, it could be educating yourself, it could be just producing something. And I think one of the keys in order to achieve any of those is really consistency. That's what ties all of that together, and the challenge that most podcasters will have. Consistency of releasing an episode, if it's every week, every 2 weeks. It's silly to try and be too ambitious and say we can release an episode every week. If you have, 4 kids and a full-time job, that's going to be tough. And also consistency of quality and keeping the dynamic going, keeping things interesting and also fresh. I think that's one of the major challenges, whether you're going into it for money or passion. That's going to be one of the big challenges for anyone. And definitely having a co-host really helps with that, but also being really clear on what you want to get out of it, planning your time, and knowing what success looks like for you at the end of the day.
Beautiful. And what you just spoke on actually brings out a pressing question from my head, because we have a lot of people joining into the podcasting industry, a lot of people who have the availability to a studio or to get a mic or a good phone, and they just start talking with friends. So it's a silly question, but I think we should ask ourselves, is podcasting an industry for everybody, or should people really scrutinize themselves before jumping into the space and start spewing things into the space? Because what you say impacts people, and what you do also can change a course of someone's life. So basically, what do you think? I would like to hear Feko on this one.
Okay, I think podcasting is not for everyone. I think people actually need to scrutinize themselves before they venture into podcasting. And like I said, when I started, I didn't know there was a structure, to be honest, but I had to do my research, and I realized there was actually a structure for podcasting. So I would also say, when you start, just learn how to ask questions, from people who have been in the industry for a while. Join platforms like APVA, and there are other platforms that educate people on how to build a structure around your podcasting career, and also grow your network with other podcasters in the industry. I remember hosting IG live sessions when I started podcasting with various podcasters, and I had to learn from them because music was actually my thing, but podcasting was new to me. So networking with them, I had to learn like few things about podcasting, and today I would say I've improved over the years. And I didn't really talk about my challenges. My challenges, just like Akumu said, or Claire, sorry, just like Claire said, she said consistency can be a challenge. And for me, that has been my major challenge, consistency, because I juggle so many things. I juggle graphic design, animation, video editing, the music, everything. So that has been my challenge. And also, I like to keep things fresh and interesting. So recently, I started doing like animated videos for my podcast because I wanted something different. I feel like the podcasting industry is becoming too saturated. So I just wanted to like stand out, and animation can be quite tasking. So for me, I like keeping things interesting. And over the years, I think I just need to like employ more people to like work with me or build a team around what I do. So I think also getting a team to work for you would help you to remain consistent as a podcaster.
That is amazing. So speaking of the challenges and opportunities, Kumo, do you actually think that the opportunities in the podcasting industry is much more higher than the challenges we will face in the industry, or is the other way around?
Definitely the opportunities is way higher, especially since it's just beginning. The challenges are there, but they're manageable. You can, if you have, time problems, hire someone, get a co-host, all that stuff. Like all the challenges are manageable. In terms of opportunity, it's like mind-blowing. The difference is like, 1 to like 10 million or something like this. Just because even when you look at the US, which is also like kind of not too old, and just looking at what they've been able to do, and knowing that, Africa is the next frontier and we are just beginning. So I'm just seeing, mind-blowing opportunities for all creators, especially in the podcasting space, especially since it's very different from all other, marketing arenas that are kind of new, like, influencing and all this other stuff that just came the other day. So I think for advertising, there's a huge opportunity, and if they see opportunity, then good for us podcasters. So it's just a lot of growth coming for all of us.
That's amazing. So I would like to hear from your co-host Claire. Do you want to share with us some opportunities that are there already in the African space, African podcasting space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that there's a good number, well, that's relative, a small number, but growing, of, incubators, grant funding, people really interested in supporting Africa-based creatives in general. And because podcasting is a very nascent industry for most of Africa, that it's quite fashionable, I would say. It's in vogue. So there's definitely some opportunities out there. We have one in Kenya, for example, which is hosted by Semabox, where we started out, recording studio. They're doing an incubator for female podcasters. So Feko, there you go, even more. Or was it Feko or Tony who was mentioning that it's quite female heavy? So even more women getting involved through that. But I would say another opportunity is just the interest in people being able to tell personal stories and learning from them, which I think is which podcasting is a perfect platform to be able to do that through, even more so than film or TV or radio. Podcasting is such an accessible art form. So one of the challenges, like I said, is consistency and sometimes even quality. But one of the major opportunities there is that anyone who has been looking for a voice to share, even if it's things about history or culture, sharing with the world about the corner of the world that you're from or the perspective that you have. It's possible to do that with podcasting with a relatively small, accessible budget compared to other art forms. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. And also the great thing is that podcasting can be done remotely, right? We're very lucky. Akumu and I are in the same city most of the time, so we do our recording in person. But some of the podcasts I listen to, there's people collaborating from all over the world, and you can still contribute to one podcast. So us in Nairobi here could be collaborating with Feko in, I think he said he's in Lagos, and with someone else in LA, and we could all be creating one podcast. I think that's an amazing opportunity for sharing and for collaboration as well between creatives.
Yeah, indeed. And I can also see podcasting influencing the culture trends of the youths in the African space as well. The cultural integration we're seeing, it's quite beautiful. And I'll get to Feko on this one when we talked about not podcasting is not for everybody. So what are the core skills one should possess to be a podcaster or to explore the industry? Or if they're already in the industry, what skills would you recommend that everyone should have that are in the industry to scale through the challenges that are there and get to the opportunities?
Okay, I think first and foremost, you should have great communication skill. Also, you should have a niche for yourself. Like, try to create a niche around your podcast. You don't have to talk about everything. For me, I started with surviving Lagos because I've been in Lagos like all my life, and I could tell a lot of stories about Lagos, and I felt that was something I can talk about for like 30 minutes, 1 hour without even reading a script. So you have to find a topic that is very personal to you, something that resonates with you. And also, another skill would be, well, this one is not necessary, but I think you should have a good sense of humor. And that is why I used to listen to Trevor Noah before he resigned from The Daily Show, because of his sense of humor. So yeah, those are like the three things I can remember now. But if I remember any other thing, I'll definitely share with everyone.
Thank you so much, Feko. Akumu, do you want to contribute to the skills that we should bag in?
Yeah, I think I have like 4 that's for me, I think is, and most of them are like kind of underrated. There's first strategic planning, like Claire said, just before you start, create a container where everything you create, you figure out whether it fits there. I remember the other day I was just telling Claire, we have mini episodes and they kind of are offset from the main episodes, but I was just telling her that maybe we need to create a container for those as well. So how do we figure out whether we should do this topic or not? Because that's where we have a lot more creative, what is it called? Freedom. Yeah. So I'd say just strategic planning is the most important thing. Just figuring out what you want, what container whatever you're talking about will fit in. What kind of future or what's your end goal, what's your end game for the podcast, and how to get there, because you just can't start something and not know where you're going. So that's the first, strategic planning. Second one I'd say is sales. You can't not have a creative thing hoping it will make money and not be a salesperson. I personally hate sales, but it's something that you can't avoid if you want to actually have the podcast making you some money or actually, earn a living for you. So sales is important, to just, writing up proposals, doing market research, figuring out who to target. And the third I'd say is, business development. What other areas can you make money from, if not from sponsors? Are you going to create merch? Are you going to do live shows? Are you going to, create, something else that's physical? So just figuring out what innovations can you create around the podcast to make you the money that you want it to make. And the last one, which is very critical, I'd say, is now, actually I have 5, 2 more. So data analysis. This is very underrated, but it's important because you need to be able to know, to look down to the data and see down to what listeners respond to. You're saying, okay, this is the kind of topic listeners respond to. The other thing would be now knowing even which minute they actually drop off, so that, if more people drop off at minute 15, then maybe you need to put most of the important information, or kind of give them things that they'll be interested in early before minute 15, so that they don't drop off, something like that. So just looking at the data down across seasons and even down to each episode and how listeners react. And now the last skill I'd say is now community management and social media management, which I feel is not natural to everyone. With me and Claire, it's me who does it because that's my day job. But I'd say every podcaster needs to learn how to do that. First of all, creating a community and learning how to engage them. So yes, you have listeners, but how are you going to keep them engaged even when you're on a break? And social media is a perfect place for that. And this includes even WhatsApp groups. So are you going to create a WhatsApp group for your listeners, and how are you going to engage them? And social media is just a no-brainer. That's the best way to reach to people, or to get people to find you if they don't know you personally. Yeah. So those are the 5, I would say.
That is interesting and insightful. Thank you so much, Akumu. And that brings me to Claire, and I would like to ask you this. Based on the skills they just shared, we're going back to the challenges. What particular challenge would you recall on your journey for the Yes Girl podcast as a co-host that actually affected or impacted you negatively or positively, and the show as well? What particular challenge that was really hard to overcome, but in the end you did, but it impacted your show, the podcasting, and your journey as well?
So I would say the very first challenge was actually working up the courage, or like breaking the seal. You know when you're really desperate for the bathroom and once you break the seal, like, or when you're drinking, once you break the seal and you start going to the bathroom, you can't stop. It's like that with podcasting, but it takes a lot of courage and determination, or just a kind of get up and go attitude to actually just go and break that seal the first time to just start the podcast. So I think that's the biggest challenge that we had, was just figuring out, oh gosh, how are we going to record this? Like, should we actually do this? Like, are we barking up the wrong tree? So really just working up the courage to actually do it, I think was the biggest one. And then I think we were really lucky, possibly because there's 2 of us and we have a really good working relationship. We've not had any challenges that have been like insurmountable. I think some of the personal challenges sometimes are just when life gets really busy, right? If life gets really busy, or you're not in a good, sometimes you're just not in the right mental headspace, right, to script or to do social media. So one thing that we've really learned is to also not be too harsh on ourselves. If we're going through a tough time, we each have, both Akumu and I, since we started the podcast, we've both had times that are really tough. So we've been able to say, okay, we don't need to immediately start season 3 after season 2. Let's give ourselves a bit of a break. Or for this particular episode, it's okay if you take a back seat and I'll lead on it. So really, I think looking after yourself in this whole thing and making sure that you're not trying to put too much pressure on yourself, that's also a big challenge, and just being able to juggle everything. But we've been able to overcome them mostly, like I said, by cutting ourselves some slack, by just going for it, right? You can plan, you can predict, you can think, but I think once you've got something that feels right, and talk about it with your friends and other podcasters. I think that's a really big deal now. Like, look, there's more than a dozen of us here. There's about 20 of us here who are all in this industry. If one of you were to reach out to me or Akumu or to Feko or Tony and inbox us and say, hey, like, we're thinking of doing this, I wonder if I could ask you a few questions, I can almost guarantee that none of us would say no, right? We're all wanting to support each other on this journey if it's the right fit for us, which it might not be, but exploring that is really important before breaking that seal. And sorry for using a toilet metaphor. It just comes too naturally to me. If you listen to our episodes, you'll realize.
Okay.
That a lot. It's common.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Claire. And I used to say to some persons that we do talk about this whole the whole journey of podcasting together. I just say, if you were starting a podcasting journey, you should know and regard yourself, whether in respect of your gender, as a single dad or mom with a child, because the podcast will be your child if you're quite passionate about it. And you have to juggle between the challenges and the hopes of life personally, and you have to create time to be successful with your child, which is your podcast. So that, I think, is a good illustration to tell anyone who is about to or is already in the industry, because you cannot give less attention to your baby and expect the same growth. And that's going to bring me to one announcement I'll have to make. We're still onto the APVA platform, and we are now available on our website, on APVA hub page, are sector-related global news and insight articles written by the APVA team. So we have opportunities to share there, events that can actually impact your journey, networking, anything you need to be successful on this podcast industry. We're here for you, and it's now available on our website. That's one announcement out there. We want to also welcome and congratulate everyone has been on this listening with us on this show. I have DJ ID Best. Thank you so much for being here, and Mohammed, thank you so much for being here as well. And with an E, nice. Thank you for joining and staying in and standing out. Thank you, Josephine and Big Dan. Thank you so much for also being here. Mina Okoro, thank you. The award-winning podcast, Cha-Cha Music Pod. Thank you so much for joining. Audrey, the Dome Teens, Norway, and Just the Pod. Thank you guys for staying with us. And that's going to bring me to the next question I have for Feko. If we all love movies and superpowers are kind of a thing, if you like it. So I was about to ask Feko about if he had the powers to do anything, or to go back in time, or to create a lasting impact in the podcasting industry, what would he do? So while we wait for him to grab the mic, okay, I think he has. Let me start with Claire on this one. If you had the power to change anything in the African podcasting industry, what would that particular change be?
Ooh, gosh, that's a big question. If I could change anything about it, I would probably wave a magic wand over the general population and just implant into their brains the idea of what a podcast is. Because I think we still have a long way to go of just general awareness of podcasting from the general population. I mentioned earlier that I think it has become a lot more mainstream, but there is still a long way to go. Like, you can mention to family and friends, I have a podcast, and they say, what's that? Like, it's 2023, people still don't necessarily know what it is. And then the next thing I would do would be wave a magic wand over funders and creative funding, and put lots more funding specifically into podcasting, because I do think it is such a powerful tool to reach so many people with messaging and to raise awareness.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Akumu, let me hear from you. What would you like to change if you have the power to do so?
I think for me, my wand would be to anyone who has, recording equipment. I think there was an event here in Nairobi, I think 2 weeks ago, and there was someone in the from University of Nairobi, and she was saying they just have equipment lying there, just gathering dust. And on the other side, there are lots of podcasters who feel that a lot of the studios that offer podcasting are still quite expensive. I mean, it's an average of, at least in Nairobi, it's an average of 40 $40 to do an episode if you're looking at an hour, and that's a lot it cuts off a lot of people. So people like, if I could wave a wand to universities that have all this equipment and can do, at a subsidized rate, I could wave a wand to all media houses, because they are still stuck in the past and they need to think of the future and kind of democratize content creation. And they can do that and make money by just leasing the equipment to all podcasters, or at least people who just need that equipment at a cheaper rate. So I think that's what I would totally do, because a lot of people have the means and a lot of people need the means. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Akumu. And lastly, let's hear from you, Feko. What would you like to change in the industry?
Okay, I would use my wand for two things. First, for the creators, I'll make it possible for creators to earn or to monetize their podcast, because I've discovered with some of the international podcasting platforms like Anchor, I think the monetization feature is strictly for people in the United States, and I think for people in Europe as well. But Africans have like issues monetizing their podcast on those kind of platforms. So I would use my wand to make it easier for African creators to monetize their podcast. Then secondly, it will be for the consumers, people who listen to this podcast. So I understand that data, the cost of data in Africa is quite expensive. I don't know about other African countries, but for Nigeria, data is very, very expensive. And I would like to create a platform where whilst you're listening to a particular podcast, you'll be able to earn mobile data for free. So in essence, as you earn that data, you'll be able to use that data to listen to more episodes or more podcasts that you like on any podcast streaming platform. So that way it's a win-win for both the creators and the consumers. So those are the two things I will do with my magic wand.
All right. Thank you, Feko, for the philanthropic wand you played on right there. So talking about, Akumu, you're talking about the tools you would like to make available, more tools for more podcasters to have access to those and to get better coverage. What tools would you recommend for a beginner podcaster to get, Akumu, if you had a way to educate a young girl or a guy who's about to start? The most accessible tools you could get.
Okay, I think the first is a phone. If they have a smartphone, they are halfway there. The second, I think there are two options. We are hosted by AfriPods, so I would be remiss not to mention them first. So AfriPods have a platform where you can actually upload, and now they even have an editor where you can even edit the audio that you record. I think it's in its new stages, but AfriPods is a great platform for African podcast creators. To host, to create, to edit. Yes. Second one is Anchor.fm, now under Spotify. That's actually where we started until we moved to AfriPods. And that is similar. You just have a phone, log in, and you can literally just record with the phone. And you can even edit it on the app itself. So I'd say once you have a phone in either of those two platforms, you're good to go.
Okay. That is quite good. So, Claire, with the rise of technology and the AI coming up a lot, what do you think the future of podcasting would be?
I think it's only going to get easier to produce high quality content. Akumu mentioned, right now, even just with a phone, you can create a pretty good podcast. But I think that one of the things that we're still not seeing so much of is, high production quality in terms of, seamless sound effects, layering of different sounds is something that we really aspire to in the podcast that we like to listen to. But I think as these softwares, the software that's available to people becomes more intelligent, we will be able to do that. I mean, there's no reason why ChatGPT can't. Was it GTP or GPT? GPT, I think. Give it a year or two and you'll be able to say, record your voice and say, make a podcast episode that sounds like this and this, plug some things in and it will literally be able to create your podcast episode. In a way, that's a bit scary because, like, for all things, we think that AI might be able to overtake or outdo real talent. But I think that they're just tools that can help make things more, make things easier, quicker, cheaper. But you still need to have the inputs from humans, right? So I'm excited to see where that goes.
Okay, so that's a future that we are optimistic about, because technology is supposed to make things easier, right? But with the rise of AI and people diving into that field and merging it with creatively bringing out content, because I think T Code shared something earlier today about AI singing. So the relevance of humans would have to be the effort have to be poured on in there for more impact on the human front than a technological front. And that brings me to the next question is, should we be skeptical or should we be afraid of what this new change could bring or possibly introduce into the industry? Or should we be open-minded to it and try to embrace every opportunity it brings on our way? And I will leave that question to Feko.
Regarding AI, I think we need to tread carefully. Just the other day, I saw something in the news where I think Chat GPT users said they were being insulted by the AI. I don't know how that happened, but I think it actually happened. So AI is good, yeah, but at the same time, AI can also be unpredictable. So I think we need to tread carefully when using AI. Also, there are opportunities too. For example, I could clone my voice and use the AI to record different episodes while I'm working on other things. So I think it might make some creators become lazy in the long run. So we just have to tread carefully using these AI tools, and also we need to make sure that the content we put out are more organic, because AI sometimes can be just monotonous. So I feel it should have that human factor as well. So be open-minded, but at the same time, we need to tread carefully using AI.
Okay, so basically, be open-minded, see the opportunities that are coming in the industry. However, be cautious about every opportunity, because not all opportunities are meant for you or suitable for what you're about to do. And I would like to ask if Akumu shares the same sentiment as well regarding the technological front and the AI front of things.
Technology in general pays my bills, so I don't like talking bad about it. Technology, social media are pretty much my boss. So for me, I don't look at technology as intrinsically bad. I look at it as it's the people who use it that make it bad. So same to AI. I think it's a podcast I listened to where the guy was saying even AI is the same thing. It's not intrinsically bad, but it will be about what structures we build around it, what policies, and AI also becomes bad because of the people who created it. So it's humans who make technology bad, and we have to figure out how to the policies that will guide that forward. And I agree with Feko and Claire in terms of there's opportunities, but there are also risks. But I think I tweeted this recently and I said it will take a long time for AI to be as human as we are. So probably not even in our lifetime. I'll be long dead before AI can actually be me exactly. So I think the next step for us humans would be to now find how can you humanize everything you're doing. If ChatGPT can create your script for you, how can you beat ChatGPT? It's because you have a life. So how can you add your human life and your human elements into any creative project? That's the best way to beat all these tools. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Akumu, for lending your wisdom on that one. So we just want to ask, it's a funny question I want to ask right now. Well, basically, from all of your perspective, I'll start with Claire. Claire, what genre of podcasting would you think is the most difficult for anyone to dabble into, and personally for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And actually, I touched on it in one of my earlier answers, which is about the really highly produced podcasts. So for anyone who listens to US podcasts or British podcasts, some of my favorites are like Radiolab or This American Life. There's also some storytelling podcasts like Risk. And what I mean by highly produced are the ones where it's not just talking, right? There's not just talking, but there could be background music, sound effects, layering narrative on top of interviews, but it feels seamless. It feels like really natural, but you know that a heck of a lot of work has gone into it. So most of those are documentary style or kind of educational style. So it might be delivery of facts or stories interspersed with interviews. Those are the type of podcasts, or that's the genre of podcast that I really enjoy listening to. One of them, but also I think one of the hardest. These podcasts are backed by major media houses. They cost, I think, tens of thousands of dollars to produce. Investigative podcasts where, there might be 6 months of research that goes into one episode. I think that's probably the most difficult for anyone. And we bit off a lot when we started the Yes Girls. I'm not going to say we bit off more than we can chew, because we've been chewing pretty nicely. It's going okay, but it's difficult because, as Akumu said, each of our episodes can take 3 months of, not constant prep, but 3 months to get through the different stages in order for it to be able to be released. So we already chose quite a difficult one, but I think there's way more difficult out there. But again, it depends on the person, right? For some people, just having a podcast where it's you alone speaking into a mic, telling your personal stories, can be incredibly difficult on a personal level. So, I'm not belittling anyone's challenges, but I think that for me, that highly produced documentary educational style that feels still really entertaining is one of the most difficult. And it takes a lot of skill and hard work to pull that sort of podcast off.
That is so true. I agree with that. But I would like to hear what Feko has to say about that. 'Cause for him, dabbling from music into podcasting, and I'd like to hear your opinion on this one. What's the most difficult genre?
I think any genre can be difficult depending on your production style. Like Akumu, sorry, like Akumu said, you sometimes you have to use like sound effects and I'm trying to like remember what it's called, but I think depending on your production style, it will determine how much time you would spend in your post production. So for me, I could record my episode within 30 minutes, and it could take me like 3 hours to edit, because I do the editing myself, because I'm quite good at using Adobe Audition. Sometimes I use Reaper to edit, and sometimes, like I said earlier, I also create like 2D animations for my podcast. So I think it depends on your production style, irrespective of whatever genre you're working on as a podcaster.
Guinevere, have we lost you again?
Hello, we still can't hear you.
I think Guinevere must be having some sound challenges. I wonder if anyone has any questions to fill the silence.
Oh, okay. I had a question to ask. But generally, are you guys doing anything to make your podcast profitable in terms of like dollars and cents or money in general? Like, what's the direction you guys are looking? Is it to build an audience, to do advertising, or there are other things you have planned for that?
I think when we started, we knew that we were going to give 2 years of our own money to put it in. So, our day job bosses know that part of their money is going into our podcast. The idea for
sorry,
2 years. 2 years.
No, I mean it's been 2 years already.
Yeah, and for us, and you see, for podcasting especially, because we've had a few people asking for for sponsorship, but the thing is they ask for numbers, so you still need lead time to build the listenership to get there. But this year we are actually sending proposals, and then we'll see what comes from that. But this year we decided now this is a year to actually go out and look for sponsors, because now we have a baseline to tell them, yeah, these are the number of episodes we produced, these are the number of listeners we've had, this is the number of downloads. Yeah.
So basically the numbers at this point, the weekly numbers at this point, are they attracting advertising or not yet?
Not yet. We just started sending proposals last month. So ask us in 2 months and we'll have a better answer.
Got it.
But
can you give a range?
What
the numbers are?
I think just to add to that is that that's a choice that we made because we wanted to be confident when we went to look for corporate sponsors based on our listener numbers and also our social media reach. But I think it's really crucial to know that, you might have 50 listeners each week. You might have 1,000 listeners each week. You might have 10,000 listeners. But knowing who your market is really important if you want to go for corporate sponsors. So you could have 1,000 listeners, but if all of your audience is middle-aged white men, then don't go and approach, a natural African hair product company, right? So knowing your audience, and then knowing for us also knowing what type of partners we want to work with, and that's the approach that we took for monetization, which is like corporate sponsors. But I know there's different approaches you can take. You can be backed by a media company who actually pay you, so you don't need to go looking for sponsors. I know Feko mentioned about making money. Maybe I'm sure he has a different perspective to add there. But for us, yeah, that's what we had in mind from the beginning when we set out with this.
Okay, just to add to what they said, so earlier when we started this Twitter space, I made mention of the Anchor Ambassador ad program. For you to be eligible for that program, you need to have put out content in the past 60 days. Also, you need at least 100 listeners on your Spotify to qualify for the Ambassador Ads program on Anchor. And I think you earn $1 for every 100 people that listen to your ad on Anchor. So meaning you need more numbers, to make more money on Anchor. And for me personally, I've made money through Anchor. Also, you can make money from brands, sponsoring some of your episodes. And I think you actually make more money from brands sponsoring some of your episodes. And people can also donate to you. You can have someone just donate like $100, $1,000, and you just need to keep being consistent with what you do. Just enjoy what you do. And you never know. Also, a movie director could even buy a particular episode for a feature film. If they could adapt Half of a Yellow Song by Chimamanda, someone can actually listen to a particular episode from you and want to do a movie based on that particular episode. So you never really know. Just remain consistent with what you do and, be open-minded.
Well, so I get it. I'm not really making, I was just asking generally in terms of you guys' plans and all. I've actually been in the podcast for a while. And I don't know from what I've seen that the idea of building an audience, which is like when I entered, building an audience and looking for advertising, it's a very, very tough uphill battle. So that's why I was asking if you guys have those plans, and just to see if it sounds like what we were doing back when we started. So yeah, a lot of things have changed in terms of what you guys are saying, but a lot of things are the same too. So I just wanted to get you guys' perspective on that. But from what I remember and from what I know, it's a really uphill battle, and 2 years is really just scratching the surface. It might take a longer time, but it also depends on who's listening and who just wants to give the podcast a shot.
Totally, APVA, and where I really agree, what I would add to that is also what I said at the beginning of this is it depends what's important to you, right? for us, if we're covering our costs of making it, that's our first marker of success. If we can make enough money so that we can reduce our day job, then amazing. But others who maybe set out with the aim of making it their full-time job, they're going to be a lot harsher on themselves, and they'll want to be making money from day one. So success to one person can look very different to success to another. But the fact that there's so many podcasters out there now, or so many more podcasters, I think does make it easier to make money, because more people become aware of it and they respect it as a medium. There's more listeners, there's more people doing it. So that does make it easier to potentially monetize your podcast.
Out of curiosity, and you don't really have to tell me the numbers, can you just tell me like a range, maybe what your podcasts are doing weekly? And you don't have to if you don't want to, it's fine. I'm just trying to see where the market. You guys are in Kenya, right? I'm guessing.
We are,
Yeah.
Most of our listeners are in Kenya. Yeah,
okay, so can you give me a range as far as possible, as wide as possible, so I can pinpoint the numbers, just to have an idea.
We're we hold our numbers quite close to our chest, unless you're an interested sponsor, in which case you can reach.
That's fine. I get it. Yeah, sure. I get it.
But yeah, we're not at the tens of thousands of listens regularly per week. Releasing every week religiously.
What about demography? Do you guys have a decent demography in terms of that can be pinpointed by brands? Because I think that's like I said, I've been in the podcast business for a while, and some of the advertising we did was a demographic thing where so I produced, so I own a media company that makes podcasts. I used to own I co-founded one with my friend before, but we dissolved it last year. And one of the ways we were able to get advertising was we had a podcast that was targeted at young moms, and the numbers weren't so great, but it was the exact demography Nestle was looking for. So they reached out to us, and we're able to strike a deal on that. So I was just wondering if you guys, have an idea of the demography, which you have exactly.
Yeah, we're really lucky that firstly we work with Afropods, who have quite good statistics on the listeners, but we also are very deliberate in the way that we created and the way that we market our podcast, to try and be really deliberate in who we're trying to reach. So we even had an individual that we know that we'd identified as our target listener. We were really specific. So when we reach out to brands, which we've just started doing, we reach out to brands that really would resonate with that target market. We're looking at 25 to 35-year-olds or 20 to 35-year-olds. Could be man or woman, generally curious, generally reads, listens to podcasts, or is really active on social media. They might have kids, but they're probably more interested in traveling the world. Things like that we're quite clear that we're aiming for. And the numbers of the statistics that we have don't contradict that, even if it doesn't get to the level of knowing how many kids they have or knowing what their jobs are. That's something that we would love to explore further. But it sounds like you've had an amazing success story, APVA. So it's really, really great to hear the path that you've taken.
I would say it's amazing, but I guess it's been okay. I really just wanted to understand what it's like on the Kenyan side, and if it's similar to what we have here on the Nigerian side. And it seems like it's kind of similar.
Okay, so
it's going to be
hear me?
Yes.
Oh my God, I was losing my head. I am so sorry. So for some reason, I don't know, my co-host then was revoked and my mic was muted. So I was hearing everything and I kept requesting and nothing was working until now. So thank you, tech team, APVA, for fixing it. Okay, we're back. Thank you so much, APVA. And the discussion has been beautiful with the helps of collaboration. However, if you want to collaborate with each other, please do slide into their DMs. And like Claire said, as long as the same interests and same thing they want to do, they're happy to help you or maybe an advice or whatever it is you may want, just send them a DM. Thank you so much, Akumu and Claire, for the discussion so far. And ABA, thank you too. I hope we were able to help you out with a lot of your questions, right?
Oh yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, so lastly, based on the last question I'll have for Akumu, please, based on collaboration as podcasters in the industry, what exactly would you advise to look out for when collaborating with people?
I think, yeah, like I said, you remember when I said, you have to create a container, like you have to have a very strategic plan in the beginning, have, your target audience, your ethos, everything. If that is set, then that will direct you. So if, for example, if you're a podcast talking about relationships, then you wouldn't want to collaborate with someone who's, not in that space, or not, pushing your agenda, unless you are going to their podcast. So in terms of collaboration, it should pretty much be towards your initial plan, your mission statement, and whether it will fit your listener, your target audience. I think it goes all the way back to that target audience. What would they think? What would they say with that collaboration? And also, I know this is a hard one, but sometimes you have to also be prudent in terms of the kind of sponsors you're looking to attract in future. And then you look at that and you see, okay, so if I collaborate with this other podcaster now, how will that look in maybe a year to this target sponsor I'm looking at? Yeah, so you have to look at all those things. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Akumu, for that contribution. And the last announcement I'd like to make to you guys. APVA recently launched a podcast production program, and this is the final week of applications. And we would like to officially announce that the applications have ended. So you can look out for more opportunities on our platforms and on website, apva.africa/opportunities. So you can get in tune and grab and reach out to those opportunities to help you become a better podcaster, or to take advantage of whatever collaborations or tools or free stuff going around that could actually help you go forward in the industry. And to wrap it up right here, once again, we do apologize for the glitch and technical malfunction, but we have to close up with Claire on her final words to podcasters, those who are in and those who are about to, and those who are struggling with consistency and maintaining the voice of what they've started with so far. So what's your final words for us, Claire?
Final words. The final words I would say are, if you're interested in finding out more about podcasting, then just go for it and talk to people, learn about it, and listen to podcasts as well. I think that's the key thing. Know what you like and know what you want to produce. And really, network with other podcasters. I think most of the people listening here, they are already involved in it. So this is such a great step. I hope there'll be more conversations like this, but each of us can also make these conversations happen ourselves with collaborations or learning spaces or sliding into each other's DMs. So thanks for putting this together.
Thank you so much, Claire, for giving us the opportunity to talk to you, and Akumu as well. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Benjamin, Big Dan, Bayamo. If I pronounce that right, I am so sorry. I could just call you Bay, like short for Beyonce. Amolo, The Dome, Felicia, The Gist, and Just the Paul. Thank you so much for staying in and listening. Thank you for having us. And you can have more of us on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, on apva.africa. And follow us and get more opportunity network and collaboration deals with others in your area of interest. And just to close today's session, remember that as a podcaster and a creative, you're constantly evolving. So don't be hesitant to see yourself evolve into something new, beautiful, and something much more beyond what you thought you could be. Integrate, learn, keep learning, and don't stop. Remember, you're a single mom or a single dad, depending on the area you're looking into, and podcasting is your baby. So pay attention to that more and grow better and faster. And slide into Akumu's DMs, and they're happy to help you. or collaborate with you or assist you with any ideas they may have to make your podcasting journey much more easy. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. And thank you once again for those who are following each other. I have some follows as well. Thank you so much. I'm following you right back. And let's all enjoy the rest of our day. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening. Visit APVA.Africa to learn more about the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists.